Welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts, the broadcast that answers doubts about God, the Catholic Church, science, philosophy, and other worldly topics from out.
Hello, welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts, a combination tonight of atheist open mic and Catholic open mic. And the reason why I decided to combine both broadcasts is because of time restriction. Uh, this year has been very busy for me, to say the least. I have been doing a lot in regards to my studies and writing books and trying to keep up with my blogs, as well as other things that I have in mind, other projects. And I also want to wish everybody a great holiday that we just are starting to come into, especially the season of Advent, and a belated happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope everyone had a great time with loved ones. And I want to also extend my condolences to the families of the Brazilians and others who were killed in the horrific plane crash in Colombia the other day. It's unfortunate that pretty much an entire soccer team perished in the crash. It's just sad. It's like, uh, God forbid, learning that the New York Yankees or the New York Mets or Chicago Cubs all perished in the crash. God forbid. It's just devastating to know that an entire team, or nearly an entire team, I believe four or six or so, survived, uh, which is still a little compared to the amount of deaths that occurred in the plane crash. And it's just sad. So I want to extend my condolences to all of them, and also want to keep in prayer people in Tennessee with the fires, the wildfires that are spreading over there like crazy. These are things that happen in nature. They have their purpose, obviously, to renew the terrain and whatnot. And when humanity conflicts with that process, we have, unfortunately, these problems. Obviously, nature never intended for man to build cities and all of these things that we are so used to. So therein lies the conflict. Nature tries to do its thing to maintain itself, and man gets in the way of that. Whether intentional or not, who knows? But we have to work with nature in order to survive. That's how it's been. That's how it has always been. So now that I have gotten that out of the way, I just wanted to have a brief broadcast tonight. Obviously, again, I have another busy day in a couple of hours, so I do not want to stay too long speaking here, and which is also the reason why I did not post any invitations to atheists or Catholics or anyone else to participate tonight because of the time restriction that I have. I have a lot of things to do, a lot of examinations and things like that, and also finishing my second and third books. So it's a lot of work, as you can imagine. First, I would like to address some things going on in the Catholic Church. There's a lot of commotion going on in the Catholic Church, and I don't mean anything regarding the Podesta emails or the Catholic Spring and all of that was going on during the summer, early fall. What I'm referring to is the Pope himself, Pope Francis. Um, as many of you know, the Pope released a document not too long ago called the Apostolic Exhortation. Now, what an apostolic exhortation is a document, a pastoral document that gives certain reflections or suggestions or ideas regarding certain pastoral situations involving day-to-day workings with Catholics in the dioceses around the world, and of course the local parishes. And upon its release, the Apostolic Exhortation, which is named Amoris Laetitia, there has been a lot of commotion regarding the document. A lot of, especially from those who call themselves conservative Catholics and whatnot, which is again, I think, very ridiculous. I never liked labels of any kind. I think labels are just ridiculous. They should be meant for food items and clothing items, merchandise. It shouldn't be meant for people. But for some reason, human beings love to separate themselves. They love to group themselves. I guess as part of the evolutionary path of natural selection, they group together in certain packs in order to survive. So that's why we have all these problems of prejudice and racism and divisions and conflicts. And atheists love to blame religion for conflicts and whatnot, but this conflict happens in every aspect of life, especially in politics. I think more in politics than in anything else. Yes, people do argue about religion and whatnot, but religion is really not the theme that everybody argues on in everyday life. When people go to work, go to school, you do not hear them arguing about religion. Oh, Allah is better than Buddha, or Buddha is better than Jesus, or Jesus is better than everybody. We do not necessarily hear that in the workplace or at school or anywhere else. What we do hear is um, this person works better, or that person works bad, or that person's lazy, or that person's ambitious, or Hillary Clinton's better, Donald Trump is better, Donald Trump supporters are a basket of deplorables, or um, Hillary Clinton's followers are crooked and whatnot. That's what we usually hear about, divisions regarding politics and whatnot, and also personal conflicts, whether it's regarding jealousy or whatnot in the workplace or school. So, in the Catholic Church, unfortunately, there does exist that divisions within factions in the church. People who call themselves liberals, people who call themselves progressives, people who call themselves orthodox, people who call themselves conservative, ultra conservative, traditionalists, sedevacantists, etc., modernists. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. All these different labels that these people come up with, and while they arguing and bickering with each other, they forget the purpose of the church, which is to preach the gospel to the whole world, to preach, to love God with all mind, soul, and strength, and body, and to teach neighbor to love one another. That's pretty much the mission of the church. And within those two commandments are, of course, the doctrines, the dogmas of the church. The other Ten Commandments, of course, and the teachings of the church, everything is all intertwined within those two great commandments. Because how can you love God if you do not worship Him or respect Him or keep the Sabbath? How can you love a neighbor if you're cheating on each other, hating each other, stealing on each other, killing each other, fighting with each other? So that's where all of these doctrines come in, all these dogmas come in to try to stabilize the Catholic into becoming a better Catholic, a better human being, and a better reflection of the image of Christ to the world, a better image of God to the world. So this document was the result of meetings that the bishops had, which are called synods, and they had two of them for the year 2014, 2015. Bishops from around the world gathered and discussed certain topics of what's going on in today's world, because today's world is much different than it was years ago. Years ago, there was no such thing as same-sex marriage, and now there is. It's the law of the land. Years ago, decades ago, I should say, people gathered to eat dinner at the dining room and had conversations and things like that. Today, that really does not exist anymore. Many homes do not even have a dining room. If they do have a dining room, it is only used to entertain guests during the holidays or visitations or certain events like a baptism, wedding, or baby shower or something like that, a graduation. And many families today, especially in America, kids eat dinner in their bedrooms or in the living room or somewhere else. They're not united together. Many times they are alone. Both parents are working, and the kids are alone and doing God knows what. So it's not the same family as it was decades ago. So a lot of things have changed. And I have gotten into many discussions with fellow Catholics on Twitter regarding this, especially regarding procreation. The older Catholics tend to believe that the Catholic Church teaches that once you get married, you have to procreate and procreate and keep bringing children into the world. While all people, not just Catholics, are called by God to be fruitful and multiply, you also have to be rational about it. If a family does not have the means to care for two children, then it really does not make sense to have two or more children. If one is all you can handle at the moment, then that's fine. You're not going to go to hell if you only have one child or no children. You have to weigh the options, you have to weigh your situation. And while we know that God provides, etc., um, rest assured that if you have 100 kids and you pray for diapers, you're not going to get diapers falling out of heaven in front of your house. It's not going to happen. God can do that, yes, but He obviously leaves man to work out his own situation on earth, his own salvation, his own maintenance of existence on earth. Because again, those were the fruits of original sin. Adam and Eve sinned, so the punishment was that man has to work. Man has to pull his own weight. So God is not going to be this magical genie where we just clap our hands in prayer and wish for something, God makes it appear, makes it happen. And it's not going to work that way. Because first of all, God is not a genie. God is the Almighty God, the Creator, the Father. And we lost that connection with God due to original sin. So we have no right to demand things of God. We have no right at all. All we have to do is ask for forgiveness, for mercy. That's what our call is to try to restore that relationship. Well, anyhow, this document was brought together by the bishops. They gave their input, and then the Pope read all these, the input that the bishops gave, and it came up with this document where he responds to it and presents his ideas, his suggestions of how to carry out the pastoral situations in the church that are going on. And while most of the document, it's pretty much redundant in regards to, we already knew that. I mean, the church has already taught that before. Um, Many priests, many pastors, many bishops, and so forth have already been implementing it. So it was nothing new. The real issue was regarding communion, especially communion for or the divorced and the remarried. And let me just tell you a bit about an exhortation. An exhortation, an apostolic exhortation, is does not introduce or change or define doctrine. And I'm going to repeat that again. An apostolic exhortation does not introduce, change, or define doctrine. In other words, an apostolic exhortation does not bring new ideas, new doctrines. It does not change current doctrine or define or redefine current doctrine. It does nothing of the sort. What an apostolic exhortation is the Pope communicating to the universal church, to the whole entire Catholic Church, to take certain actions on certain things. That's pretty much what it is. And again, it's not just the Pope coming down and coming to room and sitting at his desk and writing this out and telling the world to do it. That's not how it works. He gets the input from the bishops during the synods, where they have open discussions and so forth. It's similar sort of to how Congress works, where the elected officials get together and they present certain committees, draft the bill, they present it to another committee, and it goes through, and if it passes, it eventually reaches the floor, and the House and the Senate, so forth, process it, they vote on it, and then it eventually goes to the president's desk, and he decides whether to sign it or veto it. Well, it's sort of the same, similar. It's not the same thing, but similar, where the bishops gather together, they separate into certain groups, and they discuss certain issues, certain things going on. They bring their input from their own regions. The bishops from the Western Hemisphere, the Eastern Hemisphere, the Southern, Northern, etc., they all give their input of what's going on, what they have witnessed, what they have been told by their fellow auxiliary bishops who help them, and of course the pastors, priests, and so forth. So the input, they gather all that together and they present it, of course, and as well the cultures, the culture of the place where they're at, where they're stationed, the diocese is stationed at. And they bring all that together and they present it in this synod. And then all of this goes to the Pope. Now the Pope doesn't veto or sign it into law. He doesn't do any of that. What he does is he just looks at it. He looks at all of this information, and then he writes down an exhortation, giving his ideas, his opinion, and basing it on what the church teaches already. And that's pretty much what an apostolic exhortation is. It is not meant to introduce new doctrine. It is not meant to change or define or redefine current doctrine. That's not what it does at all. That's why I really do not understand why. Well, I sort of do understand. I won't say I don't understand, but what I should say is that I really do not get why some people are getting so overworked over this document, this recent apostolic exhortation, Amoris Laetitia, on the love in the family. And again, the whole thing has to do with the communion for the divorced and the remarried. And again, the so-called conservatives and people who call themselves traditionalists, they feel that the Pope did not do a good job in reiterating the current teaching, which is found in Familiaris Consortio, where Pope John Paul II clearly stated that the remarried, the divorced cannot receive Holy Communion. And again, this is based on the Scripture. Jesus condemned adultery, and St. Paul in Corinthians says that you had to eat and drink of the body and blood of the Lord worthily. So what happens is that these so-called conservatives, so-called traditionalists, they read page 237 of the document. And this is page 237 on the PDF document that you could download on the Vatican website. If you purchase a booklet version from Ignatius Press or some other source, the page might be different. But anyhow, in the footnote 351, 352. It says, in certain cases, this can include the help of the sacraments. Hence, I want to remind priests that the confessional must not be a torture chamber, but rather an encounter with the Lord's mercy. And this is a quote from Apostolic Exhortation Evangelii Gaudium on 2013. And the footnote continues. I will also point out that the Eucharist is not a prize for the perfect, but a powerful medicine and nourishment for the weak. And based on this footnote, some people in the church are having a hissy fit. They feel that this footnote might leave open the idea of giving the Holy Eucharist to just anyone. So if somebody's living in mortal sin, like somebody who's divorced and remarries, or an openly homosexual person who does not want to live a chaste life, wants to continue living the homosexual life, or a woman who continues having abortions and does not care the church's teaching or that the abortion is wrong and just continues having abortion and at the same time receiving communion, or situations like that, or any kind of mortal sin, that the priest or the bishop or whoever can give the Eucharist as a medicine, quote unquote, or nourishment for the weak. So that's the big issue right there, is the abuse of the Eucharist. If we see the Eucharist as medicine, as nourishment for the weak, then why not give it to people who are really weak and sick, like those in mortal sin? Now, the logic, you could see the logic in there is sort of makes sense. But you have to remember that you have to be pure in order to receive God, in order to receive Jesus Christ. You have to be pure, you have to be free from sin. I mean, that's the whole reason why we are on earth and why one of us might end up in purgatory after death, because we're just not ready to behold the face of God. Even Moses and other prophets, when they were privileged to view the face of God, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, biblically speaking, their face started to glow as if they had a great suntan because they were in the presence of awesomeness, of this glory of God. So we had to be prepared in order to be in the presence of God. And the closest presence of God that we have on earth is the Holy Eucharist, the Blessed Sacrament, Jesus present, body, blood, soul, and divinity, under the appearance of bread and wine. So again, I understand that yes, the Holy Eucharist is a medicine, is for the weak, nourishment for the weak, and so forth. But the way I see that quote from Evangelii Gaudium, the way I see that quote is for those in the process of holiness, for those people who acknowledge that they're sinners and they're doing something about it. Because again, we may go to confession every day, we may go to mass every day, but we're going to fall. One of those days or every day, we are going to fall. That's why we have to have frequent confession, because human beings, we are all weak and we will eventually sin. No one goes to confession and then stops sinning. It's not going to happen. It never will happen. No saint has ever had that experience. Only two people were free from sin and never sinned, and that was, of course, Jesus and his mother Mary, who was the Immaculate Conception. All the rest of us, we have to earn out, pull our own weight. So even though we go to confession, we are still tarnished by original sin. The damage is still there, and the concupiscence, the attraction to do evil, to do bad, is still there. The defect, the disorder, whatever word you want to use, is still there, and it will eventually lead up to another act of sin, unfortunately, because human nature is broken. Human nature is weak. So, for those people who find it hard to stop sinning, is of course it's going to be difficult for them, especially as for example, a homosexual person. These desires are very strong. They become very lustful, and just because they go into confession doesn't mean that these things are going to disappear. The moment they step out of the confessional, the first guy or girl they see, they might have an attraction to. And in many cases, the male might be attracted to the priest. It happens. And again, that's part of the broken human nature, the intrinsic disorder that's inside the human being, not just homosexuals. I'm not targeting homosexuals. I mean, we all have our problems and issues and disorders and whatnot. Nobody's perfect. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's an ongoing process to become holy. It's not something that we just stop. It's like somebody who trains, an athlete or a bodybuilder or something. Uh, Somebody who lifts weights and likes to have their body all muscular and buff. You train for a year, 2 years, you get all nice, cut up and buff, and you do not stop working out because what's going to happen? Your muscles will start shrinking, start deflating again. You have to continue working out. You have to keep giving the muscles resistance so they continue to remain firm and strong, and so forth. The same thing with the soul. You have to continue working at it. You have to work out your salvation, like St. Paul tells us in the scriptures. You got to work out your salvation. So just going to confession and stepping out, you do not become a saint. You're not a halo does not appear over your head. Angels do not come out saying, "Ah." It does not happen that way. You have to continue working. It's a process, and this process is for everyone. All of the saints had to do this process. So when Pope Francis uses the words that the Eucharist is medicine, it is nourishment for the weak, I apply it to that scenario. To those people who are weak, but do not let the weakness take over them. The people who they know they are sinners, they go to confession, they will eventually sin again, but they continue going to confession. They do not give in to their sinful lifestyles. These are the people that I think that he was referring to for the nourishment of the weak, that the Eucharist is the nourishment for the weak and the medicine for them. Those people who acknowledge they are sick, who are weak, but do not give up. They continue, they strive to get better, to get healthier. And the Eucharist helps them on that process. Now, there's some people that twist these words around and say, well, these people who are sitting right there in the street, they won't go to church. These people at the pride parades, at the abortion clinic, having an abortion every 9 months or so, or whatever. These people are sick. They are mortal sin. They're sick, so they should receive the communion. That's complete nonsense, complete hogwash. And again, that's the sacrilege right there. That's the disrespect because you're not taking into account that you're receiving the body and blood of the Lord. Like St. Paul says, you have to receive the body and blood of the Lord worthily. And while people in mortal sin are sick and weak, etc., and the Eucharist is a source of nourishment and medicine, yes. The problem is that these people are not willing to change. They're not willing to fight to get better. They're not willing to get away from the disease or the sickness, which is in this case the sin. That's the problem right there. The big commotion. And why I understand why some people are having issue with this document. And why four cardinals, headed by Cardinal Burke, wrote dubium or dubia, which is a statement of doubt, showing doubt or asking the Pope for clarification on something. And while some people are attacking the cardinals, saying that the cardinals are causing schism or whatnot, I mean, it's just a question. If Pope Francis is secure in his opinion, his ideas, then he will outright answer it. And today he's not addressed it. He's pretty much ignored the cardinals. And I think that's a big problem. I think he should just go out there and say, okay, here's the clarification. End the story. Now, after he gives the clarification, and if these cardinals continue, then of course, then we see that maybe these cardinals have a personal vendetta against him and are trying to make him look bad or something. But right now, I think he's making himself look bad. He has to go out there and respond to the dubium. Hopefully, he will and give his clarification on this footnote that's getting a lot of people worked up. Which, again, I understand why they're getting worked up. To me, that part bothers me. The twisting of the words that I just mentioned, that the Eucharist is the medicine for the weak, nourishment for the weak, etc. The people who twist it around, using that phrase to have open reception of communion for everyone, whether they go to confession or not, whether they leave the sin that they're in or not. That's the problem that I have. But overall, it really does not bother me because, again, an apostolic exhortation is not meant to introduce new doctrine, nor is it meant to change or redefine any current doctrine. So that's why I'm not concerned about it. Now, if the Pope came out speaking ex cathedra and says you have to give communion to the divorced and remarried, then that's when I'm going to have an issue because that will be a contradiction of Scripture, a contradiction of what Jesus taught, a contradiction of the Church's teaching. Then, right then, will we will have the right to say that the Pope has become a heretic because he will be openly contradicting the sacred apostle, which are the teachings of the Church, the sacred tradition, sacred Scripture, and the magisterium. So hopefully something will happen there. Hopefully the Pope will respond to the dubium and we get all of these things cleared out and the bishops could go on their merry way, the cardinals rather. One cardinal from the Greek bishops wrote a letter to the cardinals accusing them of being schismatic and whatnot. I sort of agree with him, but again, he has to understand where the cardinals are coming from and why this footnote can be twisted around and abused. And unfortunately, the language has to be clear. Human language has to be clear because it could be open to interpretation. So, while yes, the Eucharist is the source of nourishment and medicine for the weak, the Church, the Pope, has to make it clear that these people, these weak, are the people that are committing sin but do something about it, and who are weak because eventually they will sin again. But they did not give up to their lives to sin. They continue. They listen to Jesus' words in the gospel where Jesus tells the woman, go and sin no more. The woman was weak. She was a sinner. She was weak, but Jesus saw her and said, I will not judge you, but go and sin no more. That's the key thing. Human beings are weak. We are all weak. But there's one form of weak and then there's another form of weak. And I'll categorize it as big W weak and small case W weak. The uppercase weak will be those people who acknowledge that they're sinners. They make an act of contrition, they go to confession, and they continue to fight that sin. They continue to work to get better. They know they are sick. We are all sick with sin. But the people with the uppercase W in weak are those who do something about it, who continue to fight against the disease. The small case W, weak in weak, are those who sin, are in mortal sin, but give up. They say, well, guess what? I was born this way, so I have to live this way. It's my life, my choice, my conscience. And then they continue living that bad lifestyle and at the same time trying to be part of the church and be part of God. It's a big contradiction. You cannot serve two masters. You have to serve one and despise the other. So that's the lowercase w weak, and the way I see it, my point of view. So we should see what happens with that. Hopefully things will clear up with that, and I'll keep you posted as soon as I learn any news if the Pope does respond to the dubio or not. And now let's touch a bit on atheists, the atheist open mic part of the broadcast. As many of you know, when I started Twitter, I just posted random things, little prayer things, little statements, little scripture passages, this and that. I did not really engage anyone because at the time I did not know you could. And eventually, when I saw people messaging me, especially a lot of atheists and whatnot, and coming from a former atheist background myself, I decided, well, maybe I could help these people. You know, I was in their shoes a while ago, not too long ago, a few years ago. I was in their shoes. So maybe I could give them some guidance. Maybe I could help them with their questions. Whenever they have a question on doubting God or something of the church or whatnot. maybe I could help them. And I was there. I walked their shoes. I was there. So I started to do my best to answer questions and whatnot. And that's eventually I started the blog. I could put more instead of trying to force these big ideas and questions and answers into 140 characters. The blog I could write 5,000, 10,000 plus characters and really get to the point. And that's when I started the Atheism Stupid, Atheism Dilemma, and so forth posts. And eventually leading up to the book, Atheism is Stupid, and the children's version, Atheism is Silly. And I have been pretty much successful with that. I have gotten a good response from many atheists who are shown interest in religion and Catholicism. Some of them have joined the church, and it's been going pretty good. Now, then there's some which I have spoken about many times, the alleged atheists who are called these people who go around claiming to be atheists, but instead all they do is insult you and attack and slander you and use memes to argue and post a lot of misinformation and are overall ignorant of God, religion, and even science, which they claim to be masters of, which obviously their own messages show they are not. So I was going to speak a bit about that because I noticed there's a lot of people out there starting these different groups, different accounts, arguing with atheists, and I see them on Twitter. And for a while, I used to get into these little battles with atheists back and whatnot. But eventually, I stopped because they most of them were trolls and aren't really atheists, so you're pretty much wasting your time. I remember arguing with somebody on Twitter, and then I started to use science, and then the guy started saying that the science was wrong. And that's when I realized that this person is a moron. This person is just a troll. It's not serious. Because here you are, you're saying that you're rational, that all you believe in is science, and science holds truth, and it's objective truth, blah, blah, blah. And then when I quote to you science, and you say it's wrong, then clearly you do not believe in science. You believe in your own opinion. You believe in your own idea, your own bias. That's the science that you're talking about. It's not the science that is a academic field. So that's when I start to realize that the person is just a troll. It's not a real atheist. Doesn't look like a real atheist. It's just a clown hiding behind a screen name. And unfortunately, there's a lot out of them. So that's when I started to just wind it down a little bit. I do not pretty much get into these discussions with a lot of these so-called atheists on Twitter and other accounts, other networks anymore because of that reason. Because you could tell as the conversation goes along that the person's not a real atheist. You could tell, especially coming from a former atheist background, I could tell you right off the bat that this person is fake. You could tell. And some Christians who were born Christian, who were baptized, who were raised in Christianity, they might have more difficulty spotting the real atheist from the fake atheist. With me, that's not an issue because again, I come from an atheist background, so I know what to expect from an atheist. So when I see something that's not kosher, so to speak, I know right away the person is not an atheist because I was there, and I know how it is. I know how they think. I know how they respond, and regardless of whether we all have individuality, when you adhere to ideology, you pretty much are going to respond in a similar way. So, the question that I wanted to really address tonight or talk about is it worth arguing with these people? And my response to that is it depends. Again, if you really truly understand atheism, then you could screen out these accounts, these people who claim to be atheists and who are clogging your messages. You could tell who are the real ones and who are the fake ones. And these are some of the ways that you could tell. One, scientific ignorance. If an atheist is a real atheist, he or she should have a pretty good grasp of science. Doesn't mean they need to have a bachelor's degree or master's or PhD in a scientific field, but they should have a pretty strong grasp of science. And Second thing they should watch out for is the behavior. If all these people do are clown around, insult you, or slander you, or to act like a middle school bully or whatnot, that's another indication the person is not a real atheist. It's a fake. Because again, a real atheist is rational, and part of being rational is being able to control emotions. Part of being rational is being like a Vulcan, like Spock, holding back emotion and being completely logical. Now, if a person is just attacking you and making fun of you and mocking you and cursing at you and whatnot, then that's not rationality, that's not reason, that's not logic. It shows the person is emotionally immature. And with that comes a low IQ. So clearly, right there, you have an indication that the person is not a real atheist. Another thing is poor understanding of religion or God. A real, genuine atheist will have a strong grasp of God, of theology, or religion. Again, there's studies out there that show that atheists, genuine atheists, have a strong grasp of religious studies. But a lot of them take religious courses, believe it or not, in colleges. A lot of them go to Harvard and other universities and colleges and study biblical studies, religious studies, and things like that. And obviously, they take these courses for academic reasons and not spiritual reasons. That's why they're lacking that part of the study, and why they have a difficulty understanding the scriptures and religion in the way religious people do. Because they may have studied the content, but in an academic way. And of course, academia presents religion and the Bible in a different way, in a different light. So obviously, an atheist is not going to get spiritual growth or doctrinal understanding from a professor who's teaching the content like he or she's teaching math or reading or science. So these are some of the ways that you could spot out a real atheist from a fake atheist. Again, a fake atheist, if it's just clowning around, insulting you, slandering you, only looking to harass you or whatnot, then obviously that's not a real atheist. And you should just report him or her to the social network that you belong to, whether Twitter, whatever it is, Facebook, report it. Or just block, just simply block. And while Christ did tell us to go around the world and preach the gospel, that does not mean that we have to be persistent and bash people over the head with it. Jesus himself said when he sent the disciples two by two that if the person does not receive you, shake the dust off your feet and as a testament and just walk away. And he told his apostles, do not cast your pearls before swine, lest the swine trample over the pearls, something that's precious. So, by stating that, Jesus is making it clear that yes, you are called to evangelize, you are called to preach the gospel and teach people about God and religion and so forth. But if the person doesn't really want to hear it, and the person is rejecting you, or the only thing the person is doing is mocking you or slandering you, or whatnot, then clearly just shake off the dust off your shoes, your sandals, and just walk away. Just say, okay, thank you for hearing me out. God bless, and just ignore the person. Put him or her on mute or block or report, and that's it. End the story. But do not get into an endless discussion there, endless argument with a person. You are just wasting your time. And again, you're casting the pearls before the swine, because the person is a swine. It's just a pink oink 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 oink. It's not really paying attention to what you're saying. This swine is on a whole different understanding, on a whole different realm of thinking, and it's not ready to understand the meaning of the pearls that you're presenting to him or her. So just ignore the person. Just mute them, block them, report them, whatever. Just avoid them if they get to that point. It's obviously the person is not serious. The person does not care. All the person is doing is trolling you, trying to elicit a response from you, trying to get you upset. And unfortunately, this is what happens a lot with apologists, especially with Protestant apologists, is that they start on nice and Christian, and then halfway to the conversation, they get nasty and they start even resorting to cursing at the atheist and calling them a heathen or F word and so forth. And it just messes it up. And then the atheist goes laughing and say, "Oh, I broke the Christian. I got under his or her skin." There, I show that Christianity is nonsense because look at their followers. If the followers cannot maintain their composure or whatnot, or be gentle, then the whole system is corrupt. It's nonsense. And that's not what the message we want to give to atheists. We want to present to them that Christianity does work. So again, you have to be gentle. Joke around if you want, but be polite about it. Make sure you have control of the situation and do not become a dartboard for the atheist, nor make the atheist a dartboard where you could throw darts at. Again, that's completely fruitless. You're not going to win somebody for Christ that way. So, to the question, should we evangelize to atheists? Absolutely, but screen them first. And just from experience, a lot of them online who claim to be atheists are not atheists at all. So pretty much do not waste your time with them. And again, look for the clues. Lack of knowledge, strong knowledge of science, religion, and God. The behavior. If all they want to do is curse at you, insult you, slander you, mock you, another sign. And then the complete misunderstanding of atheism. Some saying it's a lack of belief, some saying it's not believing in God, some saying it's a mixture of agnosticism and atheism. There you see that the person's not really an atheist, does not know what he or she is talking about. Another thing is if they present themselves as a caricature, cartoonish, or whatnot, that's another indication that the account is not real, it's not a real atheist, and you should not waste your time with the person. And of course, the constant appeal to a priorism, which is pretty much denying any argument the opponent makes. So if you, like I said in the beginning with the person that I quoted science to, and then he told me that the science is wrong, that's the fallacy of a priorism. Is that when you make arguments to your opponent and the opponent refuses to hear it, that's when you know that the person is not genuinely interested in dialogue with, or any discussion, rational discussion, and most likely the person is not a real atheist. So those are just some suggestions that I have for you regarding how to deal with atheists, especially those online who claim to be atheists, but in reality, many of them are not. They're just people going around pretending to be atheists, looking for attention and whatnot. So I just tell you not to waste your time with them. So I think that's pretty much for now. Again, I wanted to make the broadcast short. So I have a lot of things to do. I will be having an updated edition of my Atheism is Stupid book. It's going to include some new things um, and some editing to make sure those things fit in well with the rest of the content. So that's going to be coming up soon, the second edition of Atheism is Stupid. Also, the second volume is going to come up. Most likely, it's not going to be as long as the first one. I'm just going to go through different arguments that atheists make and refute them, just like I did with the first book. And then, of course, the children's version will follow after that. And I'm also going to be publishing soon, a book on Catholicism, where I present an introduction to the teachings of the church, to the whole religion of Catholicism, and then offers some apologetics of how to defend Catholicism, the teachings of the church, and ideas that Catholics have against anti-Catholic ideas that exist right now at the moment. So that will be coming soon. Again, that one won't be long as well. It will be a quick read book, about 100 or so pages, and it will be very informative. Again, I put a lot of footnotes, not footnotes, references, and readers can go and do even further research. But I guarantee you, this book is going to be very well researched. Catholics are going to enjoy it, especially if you love apologetics. It's going to be like something that you haven't seen before. We're not going to find it on Catholic Answers or EWTN, or even though they all have great content. But again, as a former atheist, I have a different perspective. The apologists from Catholic Answers and from EWTN, most likely were never, to my knowledge, were not atheists before, and to my knowledge, do not have a background in science. They may have theology degrees or whatnot, but they do not have a background in science. For example, Dr. Skahan, he's great. I like Dr. Skahan. I love his books, his way of thinking, and so forth. But he does not have a background in science, physics, or anything like that. So there's no way he could defend the church using science because it's beyond his field of expertise. I have a field in studies in science, degrees in science. So I come from that perspective, from the perspective of a former atheist, from a science student, a philosophy student who was not always there with the church. So the my books are geared toward that experience. So it will be something that you're not going to find on AWTN or Catholic Answers or anything else, and which is why I think has been very popular because it's something that's new. That's an innovation in Catholic apologetics. Again, not to disqualify the other apologists out there, whatnot. They are all great. Carl Keaton, Jeff Cavins, etc., etc. You know all of them. They're all great people. I love their content, but they all argue within the structure of Catholicism theology. In the outside world, people do not care about that, unfortunately. So if you go to an atheist and you say, I'm a theologian, they'll just laugh at you. They won't even respect you because to them, theology is mythology to them. So they do not really respect it unless they are an educated atheist and may have studied theology or may have a theology degree and may appreciate it. But for the most part, many atheists will not take you seriously if you come up to them and say, I have a master's in theology. They're like, oh, it's just, I have a master's in Greek mythology. It's the same thing. That's the kind of response that you will get. Now, if it was somebody like me and you approach an atheist and say, well, I have a degree in physics and biology, psychology, philosophy. And then they say, oh, well, let's talk about that. How can you say that God exists, but yet you have a degree in science? And then, boom, I go and explain to them, well, physics says this, biology says this, psychology says this, philosophy says this. And I package it in a way that hopefully will convince them, not using theology or anything that they already disqualify as invalid, but something that they shouldn't disqualify as invalid because it's science, it's philosophy, even though some atheists disqualify philosophy as well. But for the most part, a lot of atheists do not disqualify philosophy, but they do adhere to science, which is one of my main fields to study. So my content is pretty much packaged together in that way to address those people. So it's completely different from what you will get from any other Catholic apologetics organization or apostolate. Which brings to mind another thing. I One of my desires is to start an apostolate or an organization to evangelize, not to preach to the choir to the same Catholics, but to evangelize, to go out into the world, duke and autumn, go out into the deep, and get those people out there, the 99, the one sheep that's lost. While of course not forgetting the 99 that are there, but going after the one sheep that's lost and evangelizing to them, explaining to them the truths of the faith, and explaining to them why God exists. And again, using science and academia to do so, to make it more credible for them. And of course, in order to do that, you need money. This world, unfortunately, is so tied up with this thing called money. So, in order to make it official in the eyes of the law, whether that means incorporation or nonprofit, that's a process that has to be done. It's not free. You have to pay bills. You have to get lawyers, and these lawyers have to file papers, and the filing of papers is expensive as well. I mean, even to file a lawsuit, I think it's like $40, and it starts adding up. So imagine trying to file papers to start an incorporation or a nonprofit type of organization. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money. So if you could please donate my GoFundMe page, which is www.gofundme.com/sacerdotus, and just donate. Any amount would be great. Of course, if you're able to donate 100 or more or not, hopefully I will be able to send you something as a gift, a book, a free book, or something. Of course, as everything starts getting together and working, we're still at the grassroots level. But I ask you to please donate to help out. Again, all of this is for the purpose of promoting the gospel and promoting dialogue with the people outside of the church. So the one sheep that's out there that's lost, that's hungry for God, that's thirsty for God, but nobody's reaching out to him or her. And the funds we use is to hopefully start this apostolate, get it going, and also get equipments to get radio more growing, getting more professional. These broadcasts, Sacerdotus Hangouts, and so forth, and also allowing me to purchase content, scientific journals and things like that, which are expensive. It's like a $30 every document, 30 or 40 or $50 a journal, in order for me to have more resources so that I could better educate myself to write even better books and quote even more sources in the scientific and philosophical realm, um, and make a better case for those people outside of the church who do not necessarily respect theology and the catechism, but are willing to hear you if you use science or philosophy and so forth. So again, that costs money as well. And and of course, many people ask me for rosaries and scapulars, medals, which I love to give out. I give them out free of charge, obviously in person because it's easier that way. Somebody asks me for a rosary and I happen to have one, I'll give it to them. It's not free of charge. But when it comes to people in other states and other countries and they ask me for a rosary or 10 rosaries or 50 or 100 rosaries, that's when it gets problematic because then I have to get envelopes. I have to get either the white number 10 or the padded ones, and then that costs money plus the labels and then paying for that at the post office and whatnot. That is another expense. So it starts adding up. So if you're able to help by donating the GoFundMe page, truly appreciate it. And of course, God will reward you for it in return for helping this. And of course, you're always welcome to volunteer and offer your services. If you're good at web design, I mean, contact me. If you're good at podcasting or radio broadcasting or visuals or graphic arts or editing, whatever gifts you have, or you have a theology degree or science degree, philosophy degree, then you can also contact me and help me in that way as well, volunteering your talent in that regard. So thank you for listening. God bless and Mary keep.